Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I'll be your host for today's episode. Joining me on the show this week is Gary Pearce. Gary is an automotive educator with transport training services in Northern Ireland. He's joining me on the show to talk about exactly that, education in the automotive realm. How do we prepare students to go out into the field and start their careers? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the good things about doing it? What do apprenticeships look like and how do they benefit the students? And Gary's from Ireland, the other side of the planet, essentially. And I think it's pretty cool to get to talk to people. I've been able to do that recently, people in the UK and Australia, and get perspectives from other parts of the world. And I know we have listeners of the show from other parts of the world as well. So I really enjoy getting to hear both the similarities and the differences between here and there. So with that out of the way, let's jump right in. But yeah, thanks for reaching out to me again. I know we were trying to connect, for quite a while, and it just didn't work out. And you get busy, and I'm going to get back to this, and then I never do. And
yeah, no, I know how it goes. It's especially with teaching, you months go by, and you're like, holy crap, it's summer.
Right,
you know,
right.
Happened,
yeah, once that school year starts, those first couple months are just a whirlwind of trying to keep up with everything. And
yeah, that's it.
How is your school year going where you're teaching?
Yeah, it's pretty good. We this will probably come up but we just had like an open night last night to try. We're starting to think now about September and recruitment. Our training center, we are independent, so we don't have September to kind of June semester as such. We work all year round. We don't take like a big chunk of time off in the summer like the schools would over here. But we're already, thinking of the intake for next year and trying to promote that. And so it's been pretty hectic.
Gotcha.
Last night I didn't get home until sort of 10 o'clock after the open night, maybe saw 100 potential students come through the doors. So
nice.
Yeah, really good.
What, so you guys only take in new students once per year, or?
We can take them anytime we want. Sometimes we'll get students jumping from another college midway, and we'll try and squeeze them into a class that suits them and that type of thing. But we typically do a big intake every September. That would be, we're waiting on the kids leaving high school, and then they would get their summer, and they would be, spend their summer trying to find jobs and things like that. And then we would get them in September and start their training. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, just for the listeners, you're in Ireland, correct? And what part of Ireland?
We're in Northern Ireland, so the island of Ireland, I suppose, but we're a wee bit up north. So I'm close to Belfast, the capital. Where I work is about an hour from where I live. It's near a town called Antrim. It's quite central in Northern Ireland, which is good for our training, and we get kids from all over the country.
Cool.
So, it's better travel.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I've never been to Ireland, but I am Irish. I got a little bit of red in my beard here, so that's awesome. And so the place you work for, is it transport?
Transport training.
Yeah. Tell me about that. What that's all about.
Yeah, so we're an independent training center. We have just been merged with our parent company, which is Transport Training Board. So they're like a UK-wide charity whose intention is to improve anything they can really in the transport industry. So whether that be technicians, drivers, managers, whatever it happens to be. So we typically look for apprenticeships. So I don't know if you have like an apprenticeship scheme over there or anything like it.
Yeah, not as much as I would like to see. That's actually one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Because I mean, it is out there. There's some places that do it, but it's not prevalent. It's not required. And, yeah, I think it would be a big advantage if there was more of it for these students entering the field.
Yeah, it's quite successful over here. We're part of the UK. So we follow their kind of guidance, I suppose, but we'll have our own government. So we have the apprenticeship NI scheme. And we also have a thing called, I keep changing the name of it. It was Skills for Success, and then it was Skills to Succeed, and now it's like a traineeship thing. So the whole idea being that young kids can come out of high school at 16, like I did. You sign up to, we have government colleges here, so they're technical colleges. So you can sign up there for whatever course you want to do, whether it be a technician, car mechanic, where you can do electrician, plumbing, all that type of stuff. And then they will support you and train you for your 3 or 4 years, however long it takes until you become qualified. And then you go out and work, So we are, we work on the same scheme as the government colleges, but we're not funded by the government. We have to make our own money to be able to run these things and keep the doors open. So we're independent. So we rely on a lot of the other stuff that pays the bills, but the money still comes from the government as we train these kids. But we don't have a big budget like they would,
Gotcha. But I would imagine being independent is kind of nice because you can construct the courses in the school, the way that you see fit, to benefit the kids.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain amount of freedom that comes along with it. We would do a lot of on-site training for maybe private companies and things, and we can pick and choose what we want to do that way, and we can deliver the course whatever way we see fit. We obviously have to follow the guidelines of the qualification provider, so we would use the IMI. I don't know if you've heard of the IMI. It's the Institute of the Motor Industry.
Okay.
So they're like the governing body that decides what qualifications, what the requirements are for the qualifications and things like that. That's who we use for the apprenticeship as well. So
what is for certification of a technician, once you reach a professional level, what do you guys have over there? Because for us, it's ASE.
Yeah, so we would do, there's two kind of main ones. The examining board for one of them is called City and Guilds. And the other one the main one would be the IMI. And so the kids have come out of school, they'll spend 2 years doing a level 2. And it's normally called, level 2 light vehicle repair and maintenance or heavy vehicle repair and maintenance, whatever one you choose. And then so you do 2 years of that, and that's very much, removing and refitting and learning the basic systems. Once you qualify for that, you move into level 3, and then we're starting to look at diagnostic side of things, whether it be electrical faults or a knock and noise from suspension, whatever it needs to be. So you typically 3 or 4 years, depending on which college you go to. It might be 3, it might be 4 years. We do it in 3 years. So the guys will come out at the end with a level 3 qualification, and that's considered the minimum standard that you really want your technicians to be at, but there's no law requiring it, unfortunately. So,
okay, so they have to be certified in order to be working on vehicles.
No, well, the government don't say that you have to have a level 3. It's over here. Say you were a gas fitter or like a plumber. If you want to work on a system that burns natural gas, you have to have a qualification to say that you're safe to do that. We don't have that in our trade. So I think this is how the apprenticeship scheme kind of come about, I suppose. They're trying to find a way to govern that and promote people getting qualifications so they have a minimum standard, but you could leave school, find a job in a local workshop and just learn by experience and stay there for 30 years and never have a qualification and still be.
It's the exact same over here. Is, you know, the certification is encouraged, and, you know, we do at school too. We prepare them to go get certified, but yeah, it's not required. You could hire a guy off the street and hand him some tools and have at it,
yeah.
you know. And I've always thought that was interesting about this industry, that it turned out that way. So with these apprenticeships, are the students going to shops and working there during the school year, or how does that work out with their classes?
Yeah, well, the way we do it is slightly different than, say, the government colleges. We try to mimic manufacturers' training techniques, where our kids would come. So they leave school, they're completely finished with high school. They'll come to us, and they have to get employment. So they'll have to have a job from day one. They spend 7 weeks at work, just working every day. And then they come to us on the 8th week, and that's their block of training. So they'll be with me for 5 days, learning whatever subject will happen to be on that week. And then they'll go back to work afterwards. So there's a lot of emphasis on hands-on learning with a mentor at work, you know.
So if they're going to do that with a specific shop, do you, as the school, collaborate with that shop or that repair facility so that, you know, they're at least on the job getting the correct information or the correct training when they're away from the school?
Yeah, my role is their assessor. Part of that is that in between that 8-week cycle where they're in the training center with me, I have to go and visit them at least once in that 8-week schedule, and then I go out and their qualification, their level 2 or level 3, whichever they're on, is split into 2 halves. So they have a VRQ, which is a vocationally recognized qualification. And the way I describe it to them is basically that's like the theory and the online tests and the written assignments that they have to do as part of their qualification. The other half is the VCQ, which is a vocational competence qualification. So I have to go out and physically watch them do a certain amount of tasks, you know, whether it be fitting brake pads or pulling bits off engines, whatever it is. And I have to decide, yes, you're competent to do that role or that job.
Gotcha. Have you ever run into an issue where maybe a student was getting some, trying to think of the best way to put this, just poor training or information from a place that they were working, right? Maybe somebody that's got some bad habits and they're transferring that onto a younger person. Cause I mean, I've definitely seen it in shops, and that would be a concern of mine, sending the student out, you know, like what are they learning when they're working with one of these guys?
Yeah. Do you know what? I've been guilty of it too when I've been teaching apprentices before I become a trainer, you know.
Yeah.
You do.
Oh, yeah.
You see there's the way it's done and there's the way it's supposed to be done.
Uh-huh.
And they're doing it the way it's the guy they're working with has been taught it this way and he's been taught it that way. And, you know, those bad habits are maybe 100 years old, you know.
Right.
You know, so you definitely see it, but to a certain extent, I can't do anything about it. All I can do on my end is teaching this is how you're supposed to do it, and this is the correct way to do it. We're following, you know, I very much try to teach them. The manufacturer built this car. They know what they're talking about. They say you have to do it this way for a reason. Yeah, you can take a wee shortcut here or there with a bit of experience, but, you know, you can't be just doing your own thing and botching this thing together. And
yeah,
you know.
For sure. What courses do you actually teach, or what areas of the vehicle do you cover?
The way I basically get an intake in September, so I get a class. We have quite small groups, which is good. We would have a maximum of 12 students per group. So once I get that group, they're essentially mine for 3 years. So I take them from, you know, block 1. We're looking at health and safety. We do what we call a G unit, the general unit. So it's like health and safety, working with others, tooling, equipment. You know, absolutely. You know, you have to remember some of these kids are coming out of school. The only time they've ever seen a car is when they're in the back seat getting the lift.
Sure.
And then so we gradually build them up, you know, through chassis, through engine, through electrics, through transmission. right, and I cover all those subjects.
Okay. Gotcha. From A to Z. Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite area that you teach or favorite subject you like to go through?
Depends on the group.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of recently I've got, I've really fell back in love with the diagnostic side of things. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with electrics and all that type of stuff, depending on where I've been working. So yeah, at the minute I have a couple of level 3 groups, so they're doing a lot of diagnostics. So we're doing stuff on oscilloscope and, stuff like that. I really enjoy trying to get them to connect the dots with their volts and their amps and all the rest of it. And, that's a flavor of the month at the minute. But then I could bring another group in and then we'll be tearing an engine apart and going through the basics of, this is a piston, this is a conrod. And, if they're enjoying it, I'm enjoying it. That's kind of how,
right. Yeah. And you're right. Every student group is a little bit different. Their own personality, skill level, obviously, and what they're going to enjoy and get into. So it's always interesting, because I have a group of about 16 and I have them for 2 semesters, which is from September until May the following year. And, so we get to know each other pretty well, but yeah, in the 5 years I've been doing it, every year it's been a different atmosphere in the classroom and the shop. So you kind of have to, I spend the first few weeks just trying to feel it out and see where everybody's at and what kind of personalities I'm dealing with. But I definitely enjoy that it's kind of just, it mixes it up, right? It's not always the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, my first year teaching with TTS, because I was a new trainer, I had no workload, so I took nearly the entire caseload of students that came in last year. We split them into 3 groups, so I was teaching every group the same subject for 3 weeks in a row. And, after 6 months, that was getting pretty mind-numbing, so you have to try and mix it up. But each group had their own characters. Some of the lads were burning cracks, some of them were very quiet, some of them have a bit of an attitude maybe, so you kind of got to feel them out, like you say, and you learn how to work with them, and they learn what they expect from you, and you kind of find out what they're all interested in, and sometimes I just let them walk away to the workshop and see whatever stand they go to and start hooking about. Right, gotcha, I know what you're into. So let's focus on that for a while,
Sure. Do you guys take in live work at the school?
We can't, the students will ask, can I bring my own car in? I need to do this, that and the other. And so we will try and let them if we can, but what we don't want to happen, the problem is if they, I want to do a clutch in my car, they bring it in, the clutch is wrong, something breaks, the thing's stuck on the ramp for 2-3 days while they try and sort out the issue, and then that means other classes are missing out. And so, our building's quite small in the scheme of things. So, we can't really. We try, but it's just not practical, We have a lot of training vehicles there that we can use, so it's better just let them tear away at them.
Yeah, exactly. We've run into the same thing. We let them bring their own vehicles in, but you do have to really be vigilant of what project you let them take on, because some of them are very ambitious and they don't know what they're getting themselves into. Like, I want to put an engine in my car. All right, well, let's look at the time we actually have in shop, your skill level, and all the things that could go wrong on top of that. So this probably isn't the best idea. So, but I do like having a real vehicle in the shop for them, especially if they're doing repair stuff, but even diagnostic. Because some of the school cars, because we have a fleet of donated vehicles that don't get driven. They're just there for students to work on. But it's like, once you take something apart 3-4 times, it's not quite the same as the real world. And students really are tough on vehicles, as I'm sure you know. And so stuff gets broken and it doesn't go back together correctly. And it's
or at all.
Yeah, right.
It's about the times you open the boot of the car and there's a whole pile of trims and bolts and screws, and you're like, lads, where did these come from? I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I try to do. I like to have a live vehicle, especially for the diagnose. Like, if we're just doing level two and it's right today, we're taking brake discs apart and we're going to bleed the system. Like that doesn't matter. It's you can let them use the same cars over and over again. They're going to ring the bolts. They're going to lose bits. So let's not subject somebody's pride and joy to that.
Right.
But about 2 weeks ago, I had a level three group in. We're looking at ABS. My own car had a fault. I've already diagnosed it, know what's wrong with it. Thought, you know what, let the guys have a look. It can't do that much harm, So I just let them tear away at my car. There's two other cars with simulated faults, and I've been in hacking away at it, doing what I can to produce a decent fault for them. So a real world fault is it's hard to beat.
Yeah. Well, and I found it's more difficult than you think to break a car in a specific way.
Yeah, funny. I was listening to one of your previous podcasts, and you were talking about that, and I was like, you know what, you've hit the nail on the head there. You can study a wiring diagram, and you know how that system works, and you do something to it, and it does something totally unexpected, and you're like, maybe I don't know this.
Right.
What did I do wrong?
Right.
And I think you'd said about you would get the students to put faults in themselves. I tried that myself, and it did not go well.
I've definitely
chopping wires.
Yeah, I've definitely had that backfire on me for sure. I have to supervise pretty closely as far as them installing faults. Like I want them to explain to me first. Okay, how are you going to break this? What are you going to do? Is it going to be repairable afterwards? And it's a good thought process for them though. Again, because they have to understand it enough to break it, right? It's not just we're not just hitting it with a hammer, right? We're trying to induce a certain symptom or fault, and you got to understand it to do that. So it definitely can go sideways on you, but I like that project with the students. And I've gotten some good feedback from them. We just went through it recently, and a number of them enjoyed that quite a bit. And it's a little bit of competitiveness too, because I have them swap groups after they plant the fault and try to figure out what the other group did. And so they're kind of like, oh, we got to figure this out, before the other group does. And anything to get a little bit more engagement, I enjoy.
Yeah, it's definitely competition. Big incentive for them. They're trying to one up each other, and so.
Yep. That doesn't work for everybody. There's definitely certain students where that's not the right recipe, but quite a few of them, it definitely helps motivate.
Yeah, I mean, I think the guys that are genuinely interested in understanding what's going wrong or how do I test this the best way, I mean, they're few and far between for me. A lot of these guys are still being taught out, even in the manufacturers' workshops. It's the part scanner comes out. It's just like, scanning for code, needs that part, boom, didn't work. Oh, what do I do now? And then they start backtracking and trying to get these lads at an early stage to think, no, that's not the correct way to do it. Yeah, it's quick, and if you get away with happy days, but what are you really learning? So if we put faults in, I hate putting faults in. Like your options are kind of limited, unless you really get into it and start, hiding resistors or something. Most of the time it's put a switch in, and the first thing they do is they start pulling the wire them apart. Oh, look, there's a cut wire, there's a switch, and they go, I fixed it. And you go, well, how did you fix it? And they're like, yeah, so I found this button and I pushed it, So
I've definitely had that where students, they take the mindset, if I have a bugged vehicle, they'll take the mindset of what did Sean do to this car?
Yeah. Exactly,
as opposed to actually testing, getting results, and using a process.
Yeah.
So that's why a live car is nice. I almost like it when I don't know what the problem is, which a live car is most of the time, because then there's no way that I can nudge them towards the fix. Where I found myself, if I planted the bug, of course I know what's wrong. I might do some nudging if they're going in the wrong direction or something. Whereas if I don't know what it is and they're making a good case for chasing something, I'll be like, all right, let's test that. Let's see what happens. Let's go with this. So yeah, as many live faults as I can get as possible are nice, but like you said, we're not taking in vehicles from the public. So there's only so many live problems that we can get into the shop.
Yeah. It's, sometimes as well, even if I don't know what's wrong with it, I'll just tell them I do and be a wee bit smug about it, and it sort of gets them going. Then that's the competitive thing. We'll have to figure it out. Gary knows. So,
Hmm.
it's kind of funny to do that. But we got a couple of cars recently delivered from another training provider that are helping us out, and it came off the transporter, the electric handbrake fault or electric handbrake fault. And I have no clue what's wrong with it. I haven't had time to even think about looking at it. And so I brought it in, says, right guys, crack on. And I just let them tear away. And, for me, just sitting back and watching what they do, it's more, I don't care really if they find the fault. It's more, are they taking the right approach to finding that fault? We try to drum in that systematic thinking. And at this stage, I just want them to think about that. So what test can I do? What should I expect to see? As opposed to, and if they're following that route, they're on the right lines. It's still early days,
Yep. That is the mindset. It's definitely what we want to get out of these students is testing and process and interpreting results. But it's tough. Cause I think very few of them come in with that. And a lot of them, like I was mentioning before, they'll mimic what they see at their jobs in the field where people they're doing exactly what you say. Pull the code. It needs this part. If it doesn't work, then we'll go to the next part. And then if that doesn't work, we'll send it to the dealership. I don't know, or send it to a different shop.
Yeah.
And that's just the general mindset that you're kind of fighting against. But no, I'll keep going with it. And I've had, mild success, I think. At least they are aware that there's a different way to do it. Whether they decide to actually put that into practice or not, I don't know, but at least they know, okay, I could be doing it this way. Yeah. I could solve this problem.
No, I mean, I don't expect lads to be coming out after 3 years. I tell them all the time, you'd be qualified after 3 years, yeah, but like it's going to be 6 years before you really know what you're doing. And maybe at that 6 year mark, they go, geez, remember Gary used to say, there's a better way to do this. Let's look at that. And then they start their own journey and start figuring it out and taking it a bit more seriously,
Yep. 100% agree for sure. I mean, that was the same for me too. Like when I left tech school, I was nowhere near, ready to tackle the hardest problems. It took a long time just to get there to be able to utilize some of those skill sets. But
yeah, I'd say there's very few of us leave training and think, right, I'm an expert,
What did you do in the field before you taught?
I've moved around a bit. So I left high school at 16, joined the tech, got a job with a dealership. It was Renault, the French company. I don't know. Do you have Renault over there? I'm not even sure.
Well, if we do, I don't ever see them, but I've heard of the company.
Yeah, so Renault, they're a French brand. Everyone hates them. Their electrics are notoriously bad. But I went in there, served my 3 years with them and stayed on for another 4 after that. And I knew no different. I loved them. I thought they were brilliant. I thought that's all I ever knew. So, I was just oblivious to the rest of the brands, and this is how you done it. So it was great. But I stuck it out there for 7 years in total. And then I left to join an independent. So I've always worked quite local. Northern Ireland's so small. The area where I lived and worked, there was, 40 garages walking distance of each other. So, I knew this guy that I ended up working for. He's a really good guy. And he just phoned me one day and things weren't going well in the Renault dealership. And we had heard rumors that they were going to shut that particular branch and we were all going to get shipped around. And he just happened to phone me and says, like, do you know anybody? And I said, stuff it, I'll come. So I went down there and got the shock of my life. Realized I knew nothing. And had to start all over again. So, he done a lot of diagnostic work at the time. He was really, really busy. We would have been working overtime to 1 a.m. some nights, it was crazy, but he done quite a lot of diagnostic work for other garages in the area too. So we were seeing some really mad faults. So I learned hard and learned fast.
Okay.
I thought I was a good diagnostic tech in Reynolds. I'd been through the manufacturer's training, done the service maintenance technician, done their senior technician, they called it at the time. I was hoping to get on and do master technician, but there was already 2 other master techs in the company at that time, so they didn't want to pay for me to do it. There was probably a lot of other guys there too that were better than me at the time. So yeah, went and done the independent thing for about 3 years. Loved it at the time, but we were working on a lot of older vehicles that were troublesome. You know, it was getting to the point where every single job had a broken bolt, a seized, whatever, and it was just I was missing the dealership way of doing things for a while. You know,
Sure.
so started looking around and seeing a local dealership. It was a Hyundai dealership at the time, so got a job with them. Just as a technician, so we're just doing everything, service work, warranty work, whatever it took. I was there for about 6 months, and they promoted me to foreman, for so the workshop controller, whatever title you want to give it. So I was basically a senior technician. There was myself and a couple of other guys were working there. Some good guys, but they had a lot of apprentices as well. They were relying on them for doing PDIs and servicing and stuff, and so I was kind of looking after all them, plus trying to make my own hours up, and I was getting every diagnostic job that came in the door I was having to sort out, as well as babysit these other guys, and so I stuck that out for 3 years in total, and then decided, right, I need a wee break from diagnostic work. I'm getting a bit bogged down with this stuff, and it's, you know, I need a wee break. So again, another local company, which was actually it was a tire center. They would have done their own maintenance work as well as tires, but tires was the primary, so they're actually a Bridgestone dealer, Firestone, I guess. So they're independent, sure. Family run place. The dad started it, 2 brothers run it. Really, really nice family. And I was really friendly with them, so I went up there and, you know, got a real good weight lifted off my shoulders, and I was able to kind of just take it easy for a while. But it was all servicing and timing belts and you know, clutches and all that type of stuff. And they were doing it. They were dabbling in a bit of diagnostic work, but I don't think they had ever had a technician who did as much diagnostic work as I had. So when cars were coming in, the equipment they had was pretty basic. We had a snap-on scanner there, but no one really knew how to use the thing properly. And you know, my first month there, I spent probably fixing faults from the previous guy's schedule. You know, it was all comebacks and things like that. So got it kind of all sorted, and I started saying that, you know, they would have brought cars in. You know, the warning light's on, or it was in for a service, and we'd notice the light was on, so they'd go, look, scan it for a code there, see what you can do with it. So I would come back and go, yeah, it's got this fault in it, I can test a few things, do you want me to do it? And they're like, well, yeah, sure. And then I would go and do it, and they'd be like, how do you know to do that? You know, so they kind of, I was kind of my own worst enemy, to be honest. We started taking more and more of that work on, to the point where I was doing that flat out again, as well as all the other stuff. So I ended up staying there for 6 years, I think it was. It was only ever meant to be like a year. Okay. You know, just to get the head showered for a bit and kind of get the focus back on. But they were good to work for. But towards the end of it, I could feel my enthusiasm and sort of passion and all that just fizzling out. And I was just getting bored. You know, we were working on a lot of older cars. You were doing a lot of, you know, suspension rebuilds, brake pipes, you know, everything was rusty again, and it's like, I'm back to this, you know, so yeah. What am I going to do? But I ended up, I actually started getting a bit of pain in my arm, to the point where I couldn't even lift a watering can up or an oil jug, and things were getting a bit tight that way, so started looking around again, and the training gig came up, and I thought, like, I'm never going to get this. I don't have, you know, hardly any qualifications to do it, but I'll stick my name in the hat. And so I went and interviewed, and they liked me, and I've been training for 3.5 years now. So
nice. Yeah, it's it was similar to, you know, what I was doing, because I was at Firestone, And yeah, you do a ton of suspension work and alignments and brakes. And then we'd get the diagnostic work. But if it was something where you're really getting into the weeds, the mindset of the store and the managers were, we just want to get this thing out of here because it's not profitable, right? We're Firestone Tires. People come here for tires, and then we do service on top of that. We're not here to spend 5-6 hours on a car. So the diagnostic side of it was just kind of an afterthought. Most of the time, it is what I enjoyed the most, but I just kind of took it when I can get it. But yeah, your feelings are right on. I just kind of got bored of the same old, changing parts, put an engine in this, put a transmission in that, more bolts, more nuts, and it's good money if you're on flat rate. And I made a lot of money there, but yeah, it's just sort of, you lose your passion for it. And it was the same thing for me. I was on the advisory committee for the college that I'm teaching at now. And that was actually where I attended. And my former instructor was retiring, and I was at a meeting, and he was just saying, "Hey, I'm going to be retiring next spring." And I was just kind of joking around with him. I was like, "Oh, it'd be cool to have your position." And he's like, "Well, why don't you put your name in? Sign it, put your resume in." I'm like, "I've never taught before. I'm just a technician." He's like, "Oh, just try it." And it all sort of just worked out somehow or another. I feel like I was super lucky that it did work out, but I'm definitely happy I made that transition. Like you say, your body can, only do that at a top level for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And
it takes a bit of abuse, doesn't it?
Yeah, no kidding. So that part of it, but the teaching side of things too, I find it so challenging a lot of the time that, it really requires you to be on your feet, to think, to come up with new processes. You're working with so many individuals, right? Like there's personal relationships with the students that you have to figure that stuff out on top of all the other car stuff. And it's challenging, but I think that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was the challenge I was looking for, but it was another wake up call too for me. I got totally blindsided coming into it. I remember handing my notice in and had to work 4 weeks, and I spent the whole 4 weeks and didn't sleep at night. It was just like, I made the right call, and I'm going to be out of my depth here. These lads are going to see right through me, all this type of stuff. And you know what? After a couple of weeks, settle down, and you kind of start figuring out what you need to do and get on with it,
Yep. I had that imposter syndrome thing.
Yeah.
Some days I still do, but it was definitely present when I started. But, I found out, or I have found for the most part, if you're genuine, with the students, you're not feeding them any BS. And hey, I don't know everything, and I make mistakes too. They're going to connect with you, and they're not looking to call you out on everything you don't know. At least maybe you get an occasional person. Most of the time they're just, they're like, all right, well, let's learn together. Let's grow together. And I found that to be pretty successful.
I think there's a lot of credibility to who haven't just left. I would say to them, I'm just off the tools. This is new to me. And, they're like, well, he's been doing this right up till now. So like, he's got to know what he's on about, I think maybe if I'm still doing it in 10 years, it might be different. You're like, I've been teaching here for 13 years. Like, well, flip, he hasn't touched the car, but, that's on me to kind of stay on top of that, I suppose. But,
what do you do for training and keeping up to date on stuff?
I would have, right up until I started this job, I would have done work for myself, helping out friends and family and helping out a couple of friends have their own garages and things. So I would have helped them out too. But I've got a pretty young family at the minute as well. Started having kids, so that side of things is kind of slowed way down. It's pretty much stopped now. But the training thing's really big on the agenda at the minute. I've been doing loads and loads of training with different colleges. There's a guy over here who's unbelievable. He really is. I don't know whether I should name drop or not. his head will be
Yep.
swelling up. No, he's pretty humble. This guy, actually, he's great. It's a guy called Alan Kerr. So when I left my job as a technician, I only had my level 3, repair and maintenance. So it was the bare bones, but like I would have had manufacturer's training as well through Hyundai and Renault, but they don't count for anything once you leave that garage. Some independents might go, oh yeah, he's pretty well trained, but it's nothing official on paper, So I had to do some training, obviously, for the teaching side of things. I had to go back to uni and do a qualification to teach me how to teach, I suppose, which was, it was total alien to me, but I'm really glad I'd done that. Mm-hmm. And then I started focusing on, I think the first year teaching, what I realized was there's a lot of stuff here that I recognize but can't remember, or there's some stuff here that I just don't know that I thought I knew. And I didn't want to be standing in front of a class going, yeah, I don't really know. I just bluff my way through this, So I went back to the technical college with this guy, Alan, and I completed a level 4 qualification, which is, the IMI call it, Advanced Automotive Studies. So he really got me back into oscilloscope and stuff that I hadn't used in the tire depot for a long time, which was class. So I really got the passion back for that. So and then we've done our IMI level 3 and level 4 hybrid electric vehicle training. Obviously, it's so important at the minute with the trade changing. So again, never had any experience with them in the garage other than maybe servicing one. But like when they come in, we used to be like, oh, geez, I don't want to touch this thing. I know nothing about it. I'm either gonna you hear the horror stories of guys pulling the sump bung out and draining the oil, and the next thing that starts up on them, and they're seizing engines, and so it's like I don't want to be that guy. So so I've been doing a lot of classes and qualifications on that side of things. I'm trying to just get the CV padded out for one thing, and then just get the knowledge up on the newer stuff, and relearning a lot of stuff that I maybe learned years ago and forgot about.
Sure.
It's been a busy couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. It's career definitely keeps you busy. That's for sure. How did, through the pandemic, through COVID, how did that work at your school as far as, I don't know what the restrictions and lockdowns were over there, but did you have students in person? Did you have to do the online thing, or?
We went through a couple of different lockdowns, so back the very first, when it really kicked off, sort of March, what was that, 20? Yeah. Everything shut down. It was kind of scary, to be honest, because like nobody knew what was going on. But we were quite lucky. Our senior management, very quickly said, "Look, you're going to stay on payroll. You're going to work full time from home. What you're going to do this month, for the tail end of March and all of April, you're going to stay at home and you're going to make up training resources, and we're going to go online." So that's what we've done. We stayed online, worked from home. Didn't speak to anybody from work probably for a good 6 weeks.
Okay.
I just sat and made, I tried to focus on making like very cut back presentations that I could present online, because we knew all the rumors about Zoom and Google Classroom and all those things were all flying about. So
yeah,
let's try and make this user friendly, because I am not tech savvy on the online side of things. I'm not a big gamer or anything like that. So I had a really crash course, that sort of stuff. So so work turned around and says, look, we had, because we work with the government, we had to kind of get their permission almost to do this, and all our students had, because they're employees. Did you have like a furlough scheme over there or anything, where the government was covering wages?
Yeah, in certain situations, so that would happen.
Over here, they pretty much nationalised the wages. The furlough scheme covered virtually anybody that wasn't deemed an essential worker, like nurses or, that type of thing. But all the garages over here were forced to close, except for the work on like essential workers' cars. So you might find a garage that maybe had 10 10 mechanics in it normally. We're down to 2 guys, just keeping the essentials running. So all of our students went on furlough immediately. So the government basically told us that we were allowed to continue training, but we couldn't force them to take part because they were technically not working. Was how I understood it anyway. So we reached out to our students, and all the guys we had at the time were actually really good. We set up Zoom classes. We started doing lessons on their original schedule every 8 weeks. We got them in. We tried to do, so I was doing I was actually using the free Zoom at the time. So I had like a 40-minute window, but it actually worked out. It worked out lovely because I was able to do a half-hour lesson, have a chat with them, right, lads, away and do a wee bit of work here. And I'll see you in an hour, and then we'll do another wee stint, and then we would do that gradually throughout the week, and then we could still access their portfolio of work, which is online. And I would say, right, there's some work to do. So we could only do the theory side, we couldn't do any practical. But that's when I started discovering then people like Scanner Danner and all the guys that are online. Darren you spoke to recently, or Mechanic Mindset, found out about all these amazing guys that are out there doing this work, and I started sharing those videos with my students and using their case studies to help my teaching, and so it worked out okay. That lasted for about a year, and I started letting them come in to the centre for online assessments and things that we couldn't do remotely, and then gradually we've just been getting more and more back to normal. So now we're thankfully as normal as we're going to get, I think, for a while.
Yeah, same here. That spring in 2020, we had to go all online and had to figure out the whole Zoom thing and recording lectures and stuff like that. But luckily, it was the next fall they let us come back in person because the shops here in the States, they were all open and they were deemed, one of the essential industries. And so our students were working and the shops needed people. It was surprisingly busy actually in shops, considering that people probably weren't driving as much through this whole thing. Shops have been crazy busy. I don't know if that has to do with the cost of new vehicles and stuff like that. But anyways, we were rocking and rolling, and the shops needed, students to hire. So we wanted to get back in person as soon as possible. And we told our administration, like, hey, we got to have these guys and girls back in person if you want us to teach this stuff. It doesn't work any other way, not effectively. I mean, you can try, and we did, and I'm sure like you figure stuff out, but it's just not the same as being in person for this. So they let us go back in, what'd that been? That was the fall of 20. And so we were back. We were like the only program on it because our campus is huge. It's two sides of the road. There's an east and west campus, and there's a lot of academic courses, which still to this day haven't come back to in person. They're still doing online, but the fall of 2020, it was like a ghost town in this place because there was like 3 programs that were in person, and we were one of them. So it was like we had the entire college to ourselves. It was very strange.
You kind of get spoiled with that too, though, don't you? It was the same for us.
So my normal classroom is relatively small, and there's no windows. So I kind of think it's like a little dungeon that we're crammed into. And if I have 16 students, we're shoulder to shoulder in there. But during last year, because there was nobody else on campus, and they also wanted us, spaced out so many feet apart. That was part of the rules for us to be on campus. So they gave me this like 50-person science classroom that had 2 projectors, one for each side of the screen. I had big windows that looked out over the front of the school. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I got spoiled with that. Now I'm back in my normal little dungeon.
Yeah, our building. I mean, it's relatively small. It's a decent building. It was purpose built not that long ago. But there's kind of like 3 main classrooms, and you could fit our group of 12 in no problem. But obviously the numbers were 2 meter distance and all that. And at one point, I think it was kind of the same time as you, around that sort of autumn time. in 20, they were starting to let us creep back in, and we were begging them to let us do practical work because these guys need to get in and take stuff apart and touch things and see it with their own eyes and all that. You well know.
Yep.
So there was one particular class we were doing engine. We were covering engine. It was just it was level 2 engine, so it was just kind of like naming components and actually. And I always like to let them just take an engine right down to the guts and start identifying components and then putting it back together and seeing what we can measure, what the techniques are, all that type of stuff. So I had a group of 6 and I was only allowed to bring 3 in at a time. So at one point I'm standing in this, light vehicle workshop by myself, nobody else in the building, just me and 3 students. The other 3 students are working at home. I'd asked them to prepare a presentation. One had to do their understanding of a diesel engine, how it works and how it's constructed. One had to do a GDI petrol, and one had to do a normal sort of port injection. And then we presented them up on a whiteboard in the workshop, and the 3 guys that were with me had to critique their presentation and give them a bit of feedback and stuff. So we were kind of messing around with all this stuff, but like the whole place was empty. We could do whatever you want. There was no scheduling issues. There was, it was like, if we want to go use computers, we'll go use computers. If we want to use the workshop and do whatever we want, we can. It was good, but it's nice. Good to have them all back too, though.
Okay, so 2 questions. One, what is your favorite part of teaching? And then number 2, what's your biggest challenge that you have with teaching?
My favorite part, it's got to be the guys. It has to be, I don't know how you feel about it, but sometimes you get a great group, and the group as a whole, they're fantastic. Sometimes you get a group that you don't like them all together, but you like them all individually. Sometimes you get a really difficult group, and having to figure all those characters out, and you kind of almost have to win them over in the first few blocks of training, and once they see what you're about, and you said it earlier, if you're honest with them and you're real with them, that's quite easy for the most part. You still get the odd ego and things like that, but like normally by the time these guys are leaving level 3 qualified, they think you're your best mate, and you're having crack in the class. I try to keep a very relaxed and open, atmosphere in the class. I don't want people sitting there like they're in school, falling asleep in the desks and hating being there, so we try to have a bit of fun. And, most of the guys, the first couple of weeks you see them, they won't talk to each other. And then slowly but surely they start buddying up in wee 1s and 2s. And then after a year, all of them are, in a group chat together, having a laugh, hanging out after tech. And, so I love all that side of it, just building up those relationships. And, you kind of look forward to maybe bumping into them 10 years down the line, and you're in seeing a new student. You go, how you going? I thought you're doing brilliant. I can't wait for that side of it too. So yeah, definitely the students is number one. Like I love trying to encourage them to really want to learn this stuff too. But that's hard work. That's probably one of the difficult things, I suppose. That nearly answers your second question without meaning to. The frustration of the guys that don't care. We're quite lucky in that our students, most of them really want to be there. It's very difficult to get into our training program.
Okay.
Well, not very difficult, but it's tricky. They have to put a bit of work in, So generally the guys we get are they've maybe done better in their high school grades, and there's more of a real passion. A lot of them come from some sort of mechanical background. Their dad fixes cars, they race, they do whatever. But when you get the guy that just doesn't want to be there, he's just there because he has to be. And no matter what angle you get at, to try and get them to do something, and you're just beating your head against the wall, that's pretty.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I really have enjoyed the connection and relationships you build with the students during the class, and then even after. I've kept in touch with several students after they graduated, and I get to hear from them occasionally and see what they've got going on. And that is really cool to see them start their careers and be successful. but yeah, you're always going to have that person. I think I've had at least one every year where, yeah, they don't really want to be there. They don't want to put in effort, just falling asleep in the first 5 minutes of class, or they're, consistently on their phone as opposed to paying attention. And, you can lean on them and push, and it's more of just a constant battle. But there's just I've come to accept, there are just some people that, hey, either it's not right for them or it's not right for them right now. They're not ready to take on this responsibility and challenge right now, and I can only do so much. If they don't want to do it, like, I'll do my best, but I'm not going to convince everybody that this is the best thing in the world to do. So I just sort of accept it, I guess, and try my best.
Yeah, I mean, so some of them come in the first year, they're loving it, and then something happens at work maybe, and maybe work isn't going so great, and then all of a sudden the attitude changes, and that's almost worse because they've started off so well. The guys that start off and don't want to do it from day one, they tend to drop off pretty quick. And you know what, I hate to see people leaving, but at the same time, if it's not for you, it's not for you. There's no point wasting 3 years of everybody's time just so that you can go and drive a delivery van at the end of it,
Yeah, exactly. It's better to find out early than 5 years in that this is not for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man. Well, you got anything else for me before we wrap this up?
Pretty good. Actually, you mentioned it. Is it ASEs? Is it?
Yes.
So, funny, I was listening to one of your podcasts on the way home, and you were talking to somebody about that, and what it meant to him. How would he what? Was it like he was talking about having the blue badge in his overalls and stuff, and like how it made him proud. I mean, are the ASEs kind of the equivalent of our level 3 qualification over there, or what's the way is that?
Yeah, it's pretty much the only standard there is for the automotive industry outside of, if like you worked at a Toyota dealership, they probably have their own. I know they have their own, certifications within the brands, but something that covers all of automotive. And if you're in the independent world, like working at a, mom and pop shop or a Firestone or something, that's all you have for certifications is the ASE. They are written tests. And so there's a lot of, debate. You could pass all of your ASEs and not really be that great at fixing cars in reality, right? You could be really good at taking tests. And some people are. And so there's some debate there as far as the validity, but yeah, it's all we have as an accrediting body. And it just shows, I've always thought it just shows your commitment to the industry and to bettering yourself. And it is like, you got that patch on your shoulder. It doesn't automatically make you the best technician around, but it's just showing that you're striving to be a professional in this field, which there's a lot of people that don't. So I've got, our program for school is ASE accredited. They worked with us to make sure that we're teaching up to their standards. So I might be slightly biased, but even when I was in the field, I had my ASE certifications and I continue to do so. So, that's the one thing that people do kind of debate about, though, is that it's only written. There's no practical assessment to go along with it.
Okay. And so it's an accreditation. So do you have to do that every couple of years, or is it like a one-time deal? Or?
Yeah, it's every 4 years. They come through and comb through the program to make sure that everything's up to date. We actually just went through it with the auto body program at our school too. And that was their initial accreditation, which is the first time that they do it. It's a huge, huge amount of work. And then the subsequent years, you kind of have everything set up and it's not as much, but it's still, it's a ton of paperwork and documentation of all the curriculum and the shop and the tools. And it is an undertaking, to say the least. But then you have that accreditation. What's kind of nice, because we're within a community college, and that accreditation kind of gives us a buffer from administration coming down and telling us what we have to do. Right. We can just say, well, here's this profession, this standard for automotive. They've said we're up to this level. Just let us do our thing. And they do for the most part, which I enjoy quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like the idea. The accreditation, we have that here as well. Like I done an ADAS accreditation recently, so ADAS approved calibration technician, I think it was called. So you got to do that every couple of years. But our guys come out of after being in my class for 3 years, they get a qualification that stays with them for life. But there's no incentive, pressure, anything like that for them to continue to learn after that. So for me, I done that 20 years ago. No one has ever forced me to go, well, look, things have changed in 20 years. Can you, go and do a bit of CPD, and improve on what you already know. So I think that's a pretty cool way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool, man. I enjoyed this. Thanks for taking the time with me. This morning, this afternoon, whichever it is for each of us.
Yeah, it's coming on to dinner time for me.
Yeah, I gotta get rolling on my jobs for the day. Got some mole work to do, so that's where I'm headed.
Never stops. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. It's been good to meet you and get talking to you. But
we'll do it again at some point or another.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode. I want to give one more big thank you to Gary for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate it. Also want to thank everybody out there for listening to the show and all the feedback that I've been getting. Keep it up. I love to hear from everybody. Also, I'm going to be at Vision in Kansas City this week. So if you are there as well, make sure to find me, come say hi. We'll grab a beer. Shoot me a message on Facebook, and we'll meet up somewhere out there. But with that all out of the way, let's all get out there, fix the world one car at a time.